This is the How to Restore Confidence in Your Project Management webinar. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and the format is quite simple. After a brief introduction, I will briefly summarize why projects often fail, right? And then the main part of the webinar was going to be the new rules, right, or the solution that we use and its different components. And to conclude, we'll give an example from one of our clients and conclude, and then there'll be a Q&A session. Okay, so off we go. Myself, I'm English, but as you can see, I live in Paris. I'm bilingual French-English. I'm a horrible consultant, so beware. I started chronologically my journey first in what we call Lean today, but it was back in 1984 when it was called Kanban and just in time and all these sorts of things. And just a bit later, a couple of years later, I started working with Eliyahu Goldratt, the author of The Goal, founder of the Theory of Constraints and so forth. And as a result, I've been basically mixing up a cocktail of Lean and Theory of Constraints ever since. I've done it over 300 times, me and my colleagues in Marris Consulting, all over the world. I've also written a very boring book, which you don't have to read because it's all about applying the Theory of Constraints in production, and it's in French. Okay, and nearly exactly 20 years ago, I founded Marris Consulting. Okay, so Marris Consulting is about half of its work is what we're going to be talking about today: project management, all kinds of project management, a lot of new product development, but also capex projects, software development, also maintenance of expensive objects, whether they're aircraft or nuclear power plants or whatever. Okay, that's half of it. That's what we're going to talk about today, projects, right? But projects is a very wide world, isn't it? With making buildings and all these sorts of stuff. The historical heart of Marris Consulting is operational excellence, okay, and so how you produce things in good quality, delivered on time, and so forth. Okay, as you can see from the clients there, we're very curious. We work in all kinds of objects, right, from a hamburger to a luxury handbag to a Swiss watch to a rocket to a train, a lot of aircraft, and it'll be the example I'll be giving is from the aerospace industry. A lot of work in the aerospace industry, but also in pharmaceuticals, in various process industries, steel, glass, and so forth. And so forth, right? So that's what's fed us to what we're talking about in general and today. Okay, so that's our life, and that's all over the world, by the way. So why do projects often fail? I won't go into deep dive into statistics because I don't think it's easy or that pertinent to talk about the statistics of project management in general, because as I've just described, project management is a very, very heterogeneous thing, isn't it, between people who make skyscrapers, people who develop new cars or new drugs or do a capex project or whatever. It's so different. There's not much point in doing averages and stuff, but there they are. What it basically says is that you're only about half the companies are finishing on time, about half of them are finishing with the right scope, let's say, without abandoning some scope on the way, and about half of companies go over budget, right? Well, that says maybe in our particular case, where we do, for instance, quite a lot of our work in new product development, as I said, we very often find that they start with 0% finishing on time. No project in living memory, or at least in the last 5 years, has finished on time, right? So performance is very poor, okay? And why is that? Well, some of the ingredients are the problem of over-promising and underperforming. It's a vicious spiral, isn't it? Because the project was late last time. The people doing the next project are going to try to take more safety margin and give themselves more time so that they can finish on time the second time. Whereas top management is fed up with everything going so slowly, so they're putting on pressure, bad pressure, brutal pressure to get things finished. And they think that the more they scream and more they put reduced timelines down, the faster things will go. Okay. And so you get the associated madness of discussing task durations with or without margins and all sorts of things. Okay, and then you get into all kinds of multitasking overload. We often find people multitasking about 60 times a day, about less than 10 minutes a day per task before switching to something else. Right, just not quite going mad, but just about multitasking and getting exhausted doing that, right? But not much coming out, right? It's like just a big traffic jam, isn't it, right? So that's the world of projects, and the idea is to get things to flow, obviously. Okay, so what are how do we do this? What are the main ingredients? Okay, before I give you the structure, can I just make a comment about what we're using? Because I don't know if it certainly wasn't on purpose. It's perchance I ended up where I am today. As I said, I started with lean, and then I quickly developed some experience in theory of constraints. And I think one of the things people don't understand about the theory of constraints, probably among other things because of its name, right? The theory of constraints. So you think it's all about bottlenecks and just managing capacity, right? When in fact it always has had a significant part of managing variability or uncertainty. There has always been buffers there. Back in the goal, you put a buffer in front of your bottleneck to protect it from variability and problems upstream, right? If you look at the supply chain solutions, there are buffers in the theory of constraints in the supply chain management. And in projects, we're going to talk about it, you have a lot of uncertainty, and therefore you have a nice big buffer. We're going to talk about it. Okay, so I think that's very important, because if you do it right, we believe you can mix in lean and theory of constraints, even though lean, on the contrary, doesn't want variability and therefore doesn't have any tools to manage that variability as such. It tries to eliminate variability. Okay, if you can take a bit of each of the theory of constraints and lean, you will have something that has all the advantages of lean, of getting things as much as possible right first time, rigor, standards, learning, and so forth. And yet you will have a system that can absorb variability through buffers, right? That's what we're going to be describing if you think about it in a more conceptual framework. Anyway, the solution is this. It's a pyramid of control from the long term, medium term, and short term. Okay, and I started working in production before I went into the world of projects, right? And for us in production, right, you always have a pyramid to control things. You have the long-term plan, the budget or whatever, planning things over 12, 18 months or whatever. Then you have a monthly and weekly schedule, and then you have the day-to-day distribution of work and stuff. Everybody's used to that in managing production. Well, you need the same thing in projects, right? And so what we set up is indeed this critical chain. That's the middle bit, and I will describe it, the medium-term scheduling and managing of individual projects. But above that, before that, there is portfolio management, right? And it's you just try to put in the right quantity of work into the system to avoid those traffic jams that I just mentioned, right? I'll describe that. And down at the bottom, you have the execution of work, managing the execution of work, where you can put in what you want. But one of the ways of doing this that has proven to be efficient is Kanban boards and Agile and stuff, and post-its on walls and all that sort of stuff, right? And so we mix in those three things, make them complementary, right? Something that manages the long term, the medium term, and the short term, and that's how you get things moving fast and get things under control. Let's start at the top, right? The top is trying to work out how many projects you put into the system. When do you launch a new project in, right? And so the theory of constraints has a beautiful simplifying trick. It says you have not managed to distribute the work equitably in your organization, right? Between the people who are doing the proof of concept and the people doing prototypes or whatever. Somewhere in the system, you have somebody who's got more work than everybody else in a structural, long-term way. That is the constraint in the system. You need to find it. Once you found it, you launched into the system the amount of work corresponding to the capacity of just that group of resources, right? You don't have to have horrible, complex things where you try and work out what's going on all over the place. You just concentrate on the constraint, right? So it's very easy to decide when to launch a new project. You just look at how long it's going to take on the constraint and when the constraint is going to be available. And so I hope it's made visible by my two tanks. Don't throw lots of stuff into the thing assuming it's going to force more products out. Only launch stuff in when the system is ready for it, so that everything flows once it's in the system. There are no big queues. You flow straight out the bottom. That's how you get things to go twice as fast, 4 times as fast, right? You avoid traffic jams. Okay, and by the way, and you'll see it in the example, you'll be surprised in the immaterial world of project management how often you have, initially anyway, a regrettable constraint. As I say, it shouldn't have been there. It shouldn't have been somewhere else. That's a silly place to have a constraint. Anyway, that's the top level. Okay, and then we have the heart of it, which is based on critical chain. Okay, I won't have the time in this very short webinar to describe the mechanics, but there's a video in 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever. There's lots and lots of stuff that we make available on our YouTube channel, on our website, to have a longer explanation of what the solution is. Okay, I'll give you one which is very, very fast. Okay, let's assume we have a traditional plan to develop a new product which has 4 weeks of prototyping, 16 weeks of 4 weeks of proof of concept, 16 weeks of prototyping, and 12 weeks of the industrialization. Okay, and that's what is reanalyzed when you're doing critical chain to say, hey, wait a second, we've killed the solution by having management try to impose certainty on uncertainty and asking for people for one number. When are you going to have finished this or that, right? And to be a reliable employee, what they've done is they've buffered it, they've added time to what the time they think it will take to do the work, so that they're reliable, right? So, for instance, with the proof of concept, which was 4 weeks, what he was maybe saying was, it's going to take me about 2 weeks, I think, if all goes well, and I'll add 2 weeks just so to make sure that I'm reliable and I can finish it when I said. Okay, I've kept it very simple here. Half the time is a buffering, and it's the same for all tasks. That's not how we do it, but this is the very short version. Then you plan. What you plan is you plan the very optimistic focused durations, so the 2 weeks of focused work here, and you get rid of the 2 weeks of buffering. So you have 2 plus 8 plus 6 equals 16 weeks of work. That's optimistic, unrealistic, and because it's impossible to go that fast, you've added a buffer, a big buffer, about 1/3 of the duration of the overall project. Okay, so 8 weeks here to the system, and that's how you're going to plan the project. Which, by the way, if you do it that way, please note it's already planned to be faster than the traditional approach, especially if you finish on time, whereas a traditional project probably finished late. Okay, to execute, you have the iconic fever chart. Horizontal axis is doing the project from 0%, that's when I start, down at 0, 0, to 100% is when I finish. That's the 16 weeks, 2 plus 8 plus 6. Vertical axis is the buffer, the 8 weeks of buffer. You are going to use the buffer, that's what it's there for, right? And the fever chart is there to make sure that you don't use it too quickly. I'll come back to that in a second. Okay. You probably want, for those who haven't discovered yet what critical chain is, wondering what the difference is between critical chain and critical path. So I'll keep this very simple. They're very close cousins, dangerously close cousins, right? A sequence of tasks going from the beginning to the end that are determining the length of the project. But in the critical chain, you take into account the constraints as well as the sequence of tasks, right? So Peter here is doing one thing after another. It's resource leveled, okay? And most importantly, there's a big buffer at the end, right? Which you won't have in critical path, right? So watch out, they're very close cousins, but they're not exactly the same thing, as I've tried to summarize. This is going so fast, I know you're not going to understand everything. I hope it's given you enough to get into the more details. Okay, the fever chart of a single project is this, right? You execute in this way. Let's say, for instance, in this example here, after week 3, nothing happens. You're blocked. Something's gone wrong with the project, and you're just burning up the buffer, not progressing at all. It gets into the red. You have a management meeting, find a solution, and off you go. Finish it off here at week 6. In fact, what you promised to the client or the top management is on the top right-hand corner. That's what you promised as a due date. You finishing early. Isn't that how you avoid missing your airplanes, right? You wait at the boarding gate for 20 minutes or 2 hours, depending on the uncertainty. That's exactly how you do it with projects. What's really nice about the fever chart is that you can do a concatenation of your portfolio, since everything is in percentages, and have on a single one postcard diagram all your portfolio, and this is really powerful. I hope you're going to wake up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning wanting one of these, because this is fantastic, right? So the one you have here, by the way, is not what you will end up with when you turn on critical chain. This is a mature company that's been tuning things and has about 80% of its projects in the noise, in the green, right? And only about 20% of projects having problems, okay? You then do exception reporting and find solutions for those, right? And the interesting thing is, when you have this, instead of spending all your management attention on projects that are already late or about to be late and about to be finished, your management attention is where it should be, back up at the beginning, looking at the new projects coming in, trying to work out why this project or that project is not going well. Why is it not healthy? So the most important project in the portfolio you see in front of you here is P1. How come it's burning up its buffer and not progressing? Let's find out. Is it because marketing and engineering are fighting? Is it because our clients ask for something that's impossible? What's going on? Okay, and you still have a year to solve the problem, right? So it's a completely different world. That's it in terms of the concepts. Forgive me, we went very fast. Have a look at all we provide to better understand. Let's go through this example. This is an aeronautical equipment manufacturer. Okay, as I said, we have only time to choose one, so I've just picked this one. Have a look at the videos of all the other stuff we do in other kinds of businesses. It's therefore producing solenoid valves, pressure valves, motor operated valves, manifold blocks, and these sorts of things for mostly the aeronautical industry, also some military ground vehicles, some ship things, and even stuff for spacecraft. So high-tech stuff. And we're talking about a story that happened just over here, a few miles outside Paris. And what we did, as we usually do, did a 2-day diagnostic to work out what's going on, whether the critical chain solution would work, and then we helped implement over 18 months the critical chain. Right? There was here a regrettable bottleneck. The bottleneck, the capacity constraint when we started, was the testing and qualification laboratory, where they tested it for the products for endurance, for corrosion in saline environments, for heating, vibration, all these sorts of things, right? Which, okay, you have to be done, but it's not very high tech, and it's quite easy to buy more equipment or have more people to do it to increase the capacity. It shouldn't have been the bottleneck, and maybe there'll be some questions about that. It'd be a good idea if your constraint in your system was a reasonable one, not a silly one. Anyway, off we go. That's what we started with, and what we did was implemented critical chain. I didn't describe it very well, very quickly initially when we're doing critical chain here. Oops. Yeah, critical chain. That red bar, which is the critical chain, that sequence of events is the constraint of the project and will determine the success or failure of the project, right? It is that sequence of tasks you want to optimize. So we implement a relay race on that red series of tasks so that it goes as fast as possible. And to do that, because we and our clients have a sense of humor, we usually use some kind of silly, remarkable object. It varies from company to company. In this case, they had panda teddy bears with t-shirts, the t-shirt with the name of the project on it, right? And those pandas went through the company from desk to desk, from organization to organization, and when people saw that, they said, hey, watch out, that person is on the critical chain of that project, leave them alone, don't tell them what you did during your holidays, let them do the work. They are defining the performance of that project. An hour lost on that resource at that station is an hour lost for the project, right? It's pure theory of constraints. We did some work opening up the bottleneck, 5S, checklists, better involvement, a bit of equipment investment, and opened up to weekends and that sort of stuff to get much more out. And we looked at other opportunities to accelerate projects. So, please don't think that I'm saying, critical chain is the answer. What is your question? We do a lot of other stuff when we implement critical chain. Here, for instance, they internalized prototyping, right? It used to be done outside, which took too long. They brought it back in so that they could do in days what used to take weeks. Okay, so it's not just critical chain is the answer, right? There's a lot of other things going on to get the results you're going to see in a second. Okay, so the critical chain fever chart was used. That's the for their portfolio, so you can see what it looks like, right? Easy to decide the priorities of the people and what they needed to do. And once they'd started with 3 pilot projects, they then, after about a year, deployed it to the entire portfolio, and it's now stable and going very well. And they're doing analysis of buffer consumptions. I won't have time to describe what that is, but it's a very focused, very powerful process of ongoing improvement, which is enabled by critical chain. Have a look, it's fantastic. So what did they do? They reduced the lead times divided by 2, from 3-4 years initially down to 18 months. They went from 0% on-time finish to 100% on-time finish, and they get much better visibility and control of everything going on. Don't believe me, I'm just a horrible consultant. Have a look at the videos. They are in French with English subtitles. So and there are lots and lots of other videos by our clients that I could have talked about. Okay. So to conclude, I know it sounds crazy, but the results you can get out of doing what I've proposed is just way above your expectations, right? Finishing all your projects on time, or having only honourable reasons for finishing late. That's one point, right? Which is what you're hoping for, maybe. But it doesn't only do that. You'll go faster, much faster, often twice as fast, and you can do more, be more efficient, and get more projects out every year. So it's absolutely astounding results, which just goes to show you how it's the way you manage your projects today that's determining your performance, right? Because all we've done here is think of different ways of managing things, and that's the kind of results we get. I've said it several times, forgive me, this is only a few minutes of executive summary. There are 500 videos on the YouTube channel of Marris Consulting. 100 of those deal with critical change, so there's a 3-minute version, 10-minute version, 1-hour version, and 100 videos to give you a lot more information about all that. Okay, we also, this is the advertising page of 30 seconds. We do training. There's an online course which you can purchase to learn all this at your leisure by yours truly. We do training sessions throughout the world in our client locations. We're always doing about one a week somewhere in the world. And we do the diagnostics. If it's an organization less than 500 people, we do it very quickly in 2 days, or if it's bigger, we adapt it, but we can do the diagnostics very quickly. And then if it's necessary, and if we do consulting. We're a consultancy firm. Okay, so that is it. I will now turn to my webinar manager and ask, are there any questions? I've seen lots of questions coming through, but I haven't had time to read them, of course.
Yes. Hello, everyone. We have a couple of questions. Not sure we'll have time to review all of them with the time left. So I'll try to pick most of them. I will start with the first one from Jan Heptinstall. Do you find common issues across the range of project domains your clients work in, or are they different in each domain?
No, I think they are fairly different. There's more the madness is proportional to the square of the size of the organization, right? So the organizations with 100 people or 400 people can be still more or less in control, not too mad. It's fairly rare when you get up to large organizations with thousands of people where it's just that is madness. So that's one thing, and also it's kind of different depending on how quickly it's going to take to solve the problem, because even if you implement what I've just described, you're not going to get the results instantaneously, or not all of them, right? And so if you're in an organization where you're going to see the results within 3 months, it's kind of a different situation than that of when it's going to take you 3 years before the thing starts emerging and making sense, and the pressure goes down and the results start looking good. So no, I think it's fairly different, and it's also can be a bit different from one culture to another. The capacity to talk explicitly about uncertainty is different from, culturally speaking, from one country to another.
Next question by David. What are the biggest factors that prevent a business from taking on CCPM as a project management method, and what might help to influence those factors?
I think one of the reasons is that everyone, right back to university professors, think that it's impossible to manage projects with the kind of performance we've described, and people in the business think that they're defeatist as soon as they start a project. They think it's going to be late. They think you're necessarily going to have to scream at each other and lie, and you're going to explode the budget and so forth, so forth. You can't be successful with a project, or not our portfolio of projects. Okay, so they're not expecting a solution, and therefore they're not looking for one. Okay, and there's certifications, there's Agile, there's all sorts of things that have been tried, and the result is still the same, right? Projects fail. So nobody expects there to be a solution that works. Okay, so people are just not looking for it. It's a solution that it's very hard to explain to a university student who has not worked why we do it that way, because it's all based on politics and careers and the relationship between you and your boss and all these sorts of things. So at university they won't understand it much, and therefore it's not mentioned at university. People therefore get to the market, even though critical chain's been here for 25 years, never having it mentioned at university, so they don't think it's an orthodox, traditional, acceptable way of doing things, right? It's only very recently that it started appearing in some books, as Ian, who asked the previous questions, knows well. England is now ahead of the rest of the world in that the Association for Project Management in the UK has published a book about critical chain and efficient organization. That's not the case in other countries. So you have to be a bandit to use critical chain, and not everybody is prepared to do that.
Okay, thanks. Next question by Jean-Luc. How to consider the different types of projects, from technical manufacturing up to troubleshooting, or if I may rephrase it, can we have a different type of project in the same portfolio fever chart?
Yes, that's the beauty of the portfolio fever chart. You can have big projects, small projects, 2-month projects next to 2-year projects, because everything is in percent. Okay, I'll give you one example which is remarkable because it's very frequent and very powerful. An engineering to order company, right, which is developing complex equipment, might have a 1-year or 2-year timeline to develop a new complicated pieces of equipment, right? But the same teams of engineering and design will have to answer call for tenders, right? There's a new thing to be built, and they only have 6 weeks or 3 weeks to do the call for tender. And it's the same people. They're working both on a 3-week project and on a 2-year project. You can put both of those on a fever chart and work out what's going on. That's fantastic, right? The other thing is, that's where for us we use just more things coming from lean than theory of constraints. We like to have standard templates for types of projects, and it's not one template for all your projects, right? You have families of projects, right? A completely new product development, a CapEx project, a change of process, a change of raw material, whatever. So you have about 5-8 different kinds of projects that you're running in an industrial organization, and you treat those differently, but you can put them on the same portfolio fever chart.
A question from Beth is, can this concept be applied to a purely service-based business, not only machine efficiency or market sensor?
Yes, of course, and we'll be publishing some work we've been doing on pure service organizations in software development, software implementations, and all these sorts of things. Yeah, there's absolutely no reason. It's a task is a task, a resource is a resource, and it works fine in service environments. We've just recently done a project in insurance company where they have to deal with insurance issues. So that was completely immaterial. And of course, software, ERP implementations, CRM implementations, IT, lots of immaterial stuff, yes, and services.
So I will make the connection with the following question. I will simplify it because it can get a bit too technical for the time left, but would you say that critical chain and agile methods are compatible?
They can be. The main problem is the consultants, right? That say, agile is better than critical chain, or critical chain is better than agile, and don't I won't invite you to my birthday party and all that stuff. If you look at ways of how to put them together and build them together, you can. And indeed, you can probably have in the same portfolio, somebody was asking the previous question, right? Different kinds of projects. You could probably have a portfolio where some of them are under critical chain and some are under pure agile. That's not a problem, as long as it's a good idea for the different types of projects. Okay. And the other thing, as you saw maybe in the slides, is that very often running agile, doing weekly scrums or whatever, you can put into a system which has an architecture above it that is using critical chain. Indeed, we will be presenting a case just like that one very soon, where that's what they're doing. Yeah, no problem to have agile and critical chain together. It's as long as the mindset is to make sure that you're doing 1 + 1 = 3 rather than a fight that's still going on. Thank you very much for your time, and take care. Bye-bye.